All right, let's get rolling. Erik Hogan, you are one of my favorite writers, photographers, videographers, and accounts on Substack. We've known each other a little while now. We shared numbers and talked a few times, but we've been planning getting together and doing a live for a while just so we can talk about really one of my favorite concepts, which is convergence. And that's a theme that comes across in your writing quite a bit. So, field notes generally, you're writing on reflections and stories behind backpacking and photography, which you've gotten into throughout your life, but evolved in different ways. And you start bringing in other concepts like philosophy, fatherhood, and really just living artfully. And I love how you find ways to synergize all of these pursuits that you love, but then make not only yourself, but anyone who's lucky enough to read your writing and look at your pictures better. I'm really curious kind of when you started. I know you grew up out and just being outdoors, but when did you really start getting into backpacking and camping overnight and kind of making that a part of your life?
Oh, yeah, it's been since childhood. My dad introduced me to it. He took me camping, overnight camping since I can remember, and got into Cub Scouts for a little while. And, um, I had a very fortunate childhood growing up. My mom is actually Austrian. So when I was young, every other summer we'd spend in Austria and the Alps and hiking in the mountains there. And then when I was a little bit older, my dad would take us camping out west. Been to Colorado and Wyoming and the Canadian Rockies and Alaska. So I had a chance to explore quite a bit when I was younger. But more locally, I did 2 week backpacking, canoeing, and rock climbing wilderness camp when I was in high school. Then that kind of helped me prepare for going out on my own. But I've done quite a bit of overnight backpacking, just kind of exploring the woods on my own. Before cell phones existed, I'd just tell my parents, "Hey, I'll be back in a day or two," and go up to the Chattooga River and spend a couple nights and come back. And it's been a long time,
Outdoors without a cell phone, that sounds really dangerous. So why would you do
right?
that?
Exactly. Different
Isn't it
world
funny
back
that
then.
it sounds insane, but like, of course, cell phones have not been around that long. But
Yep.
you do, another thing that I really appreciate about you is you go out in nature and you're doing a lot of your writing while you're backpacking, while you're hiking, and you're doing it uh, actually during the pursuit. When did you start writing?
That was, I think mostly probably in college. Like I had an interest a little bit before then, but um, along with my interest in the outdoors, went to college. Both of my parents being college professors, it was just kind of the thing to do to go to college. I never really had the plan, but I wanted to start off in ecology. But it was all the math and the science involved in that. It just kind of wasn't going to work out. I saw that writing pretty quick, so I switched and got an English major. And my idea at that point was that I could be a writer. Um, and I really enjoyed it. I took a bunch of literature classes. For some reason, I was only ever able to take one creative writing class, but it still was one of my favorite classes the entire time. And then, I graduated and found out that being a writer is not much of a paying career for the first 30 or 40 years. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where it started.
Yeah, and I'm gonna age you a little bit right now because I know that you're old enough to take a class in photography using something called film, which most people aren't aware of
Exactly.
anymore with digital photography.
Yep.
Was that in high school or was that in college when you took that photography class?
That was in high school. I took several art classes in high school, and one was photography. And my dad had a couple cameras that I used. The high school had in the art room, kind of in the back, had its makeshift dark room where I mean, we went there and developed our own rolls of film and burned it onto the photo paper and developed the paper and did the whole 9 yards of it. But, once the class was over and I was out of high school, I didn't have that access to that dark room anymore, and that just kinda ended it for me.
So that got shelved for a while. You're an outdoors kid. You go to college. You start thinking maybe becoming a writer. When you get out of college, was that right around 9/11?
Yes. So, I graduated technically in 1999 from the University of Georgia, I hung around Athens for a little while, just doing odd jobs, not really having much of a direction. My wife was finishing up her degree in dance, and so she was thinking about going to New York City. And I was thinking New York City to be a writer and get into maybe editing to have a paying career while I'm doing that. I actually tried to move to New York in 2000. And so I was up there for a few months and I couldn't get a job because I didn't have a permanent address up there. And I couldn't get a permanent address because I didn't have a job. And I just couldn't work around that catch 22. So I ran out of money and had to come home. Um, but yeah, the plan, she graduated. We were going to move up there together. We actually had plane tickets to fly up there and had a sublet lined up. And that was for September 20th of 2001. And so obviously all of that got canceled by September 11th. Um, and it was there that I was scrambling to figure out where to go next. Had an inclination to join the military originally, like right away. She didn't want that, so we kind of came to a compromise. But that, a couple weeks later, I was enrolled in EMT school down here in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, 9/11, and this has come across in your writing, in your bio, which I always love reading bios of accounts that I enjoy, and you have a phenomenal bio that
Thank
tells
you.
some of this story. But yet your call to service after 9/11 led you into EMT, and then eventually becoming a police officer, correct?
Right. Yes.
Yep. So you've now been a cop for how long?
18 years.
15 years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. It's been a while.
So yeah, you're a father. You went to school to be a writer, but 9/11 hit, so you pivoted and you become EMT and then law enforcement officer, and also part of the SWAT team as well, correct?
Sure. Yep.
And are you still writing for fun in those early days, or like journaling personally, or did you table that for a while?
Little bits of journaling, but nothing really consistent or regular.
Yeah, it makes so much sense that you went to school and got an English major and have like some formal training in writing. Don't get me wrong. Like I think I'm a decent writer. I love telling stories and they come across pretty well, but there's levels to everything. And when you write and you tell the story, like my favorite series that you've written was a recent one when you did the hike with your son when he
Hmm.
came to school. And the way you write it feels like you're there with you. You have a way of describing scenery, emotions, perspectives, and just the fine details of an environment in a way that would be very challenging for me to do. So knowing that you have that background makes a lot of sense, but also you're clearly just really passionate about it. Are you
Yeah.
taking field notes when you're on these hikes, or is this stuff that you just kind of remember, jot down ideas, and then go back home and do the bulk of the work?
It's a combination, to be honest. So yeah, I have my little notebook with me while I'm hiking. Sometimes significant, I don't pull it out during the day while I'm hiking or while I'm backpacking, but um, sometimes I'll put in a little note in my phone while I'm on the way if I want to remember specifically where something happened. But that's how I wind down the end of the day on these trips is, I'll crawl into my tent and then pull out that little notebook and then just rehash the day from the beginning. And a lot of that's just pure scribble, not even intending to be a final product there, but it kind of just jogs my memory and documents kind of things so that I can go back later and refer to those notes. And then that brings back the memory of it. And then that's kind of where the end story comes from.
Hence the term field notes. So you got your field notes, and then you built the post that you make.
Exactly.
When did photography come back into your life?
Ooh, so back in 2019, uh, I broke my knee on the job. So there was a guy with felony warrants who took off running, and I chased him. There was a neck high chain link fence in somebody's backyard. He flipped over it. I went over it. We ran across the backyard. That same fence was on the other side. He went over it again. I went over it again, but landed wrong, and I blew out my ACL. So that put me on light duty, and it got me into criminal investigations, which is where I kind of had wanted to go for a while anyway. So that turned out pretty fortunate. But there was a long period of time there where I couldn't really go out and do a whole lot. And the unit that I was in was property crimes. And come to find out, they had a digital camera in their drawer that nobody working back there even knew was there. And it was just assigned to the unit. And since nobody was using it, I pulled it out, and it's kind of along about the same time that COVID really hit. So, everything's on lockdown. There's not a whole lot to do. So I just pull out this camera and brought back all the memories from high school and started figuring it out, and then started looking online about, well, what can you do with photography these days? And then ran across like, well, adventure photography, nature photography, and it just struck a chord and kind of took
That
off
was
from there.
6 years ago. And so I assume you start playing with it, working with it, and building skills. And it's wild to think about like what you can do in a short amount of time. And 6 years is not that long. And I always like having conversation with people about like who's your favorite photographer, who's your favorite artist. And when these conversations come up, I love saying your name. And of course, unless they're on Substack, they're not familiar with you. But then I can
Right.
show them these pictures. And as I've told you before, your photography it pairs so well with your writing, because before you show a picture, you're describing the scenery. But then when you show your picture, as I've mentioned, your pi- the photography looks like it's realer than the actual, like if you were to take a picture with these amazing phones that we have now that can capture a moment, like you enhance reality. And the editing process, I'm interested in like whether it's the waterfalls, flowers, or just scenery in general. Kind of how have you evolved your process, and what are you doing to invoke kind of the emotions and illumination of these environments that you do?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. It's an ongoing process, right? I mean, everything you'll read about photography is, hey, you've got to find your voice and find your unique style, but there's no real guidelines about how you do that or how that happens. So, I think probably it's my own style has kind of changed over the years a little bit, and it'll continue to change. But yeah, it's for me it's about the more artistic element of it, so not necessarily documentary in the sense of this is exactly how it looked, but it's trying to evoke that emotion and that feel of the way it was there, way it was felt to me when I was there. So, there's you can kind of adjust the tone of the photo, you can adjust the temperature of it, whether it's got more warm tones, cool tones, adding or taking away the contrast. There's a lot to be done with the editing of it. Um, yeah, it's just kind of an ongoing evolution, I would say.
I mean, and coming back to convergence, it's so true of life, of writing, of the phases of life that you're in, responding to whatever crises, change in the world with COVID, knee injury, but finding ways to get invested in something that resonates with you, and then build your skills and evolve over time. So it's 2019. You're getting into photography. I assume you're not hiking too hard as the knee is healing up. Um,
Yeah, not until I healed up, right.
so when does the backpacking and the photography start to converge?
So that was interesting because, I was taking pictures of drawn to the sunrises and sunsets, and, just as brilliant examples as I could find of those. But it's really logistically hard to drive an hour or 2 up to the mountains in time to get there for the sunrise. So the, pretty simple answer was, "Hey, I can go up the first day, stay at a place for sunset, camp overnight, and then I'll be there for sunrise and just drive home the next day." So that's kinda where it started, and, um, tried that out with my photography gear for the first time on Siler Bald in North Carolina, and it worked out really well. So it's just been continuing to look for new places and pushing the boundaries of what I can do since then.
Hell yeah! And was this back in 2020, that first time, or was it 2021? When did you start doing that?
I think it might have been 2020.
Okay, so
I
5 years ago.
Yeah,
And
2020 or early 2021, I can't quite remember, but yeah.
very cool. So you start hiking on purpose to get good pictures of sunsets and sunrises. When do you start pairing your photography with writing?
Ooh, that, was when I found Substack, actually. It's just such a frustrating thing with photography these days because of how Instagram has flooded the market with photographers, and that was the initial outlet, was I'm putting all this time and effort into making these photographs as best as I can. I want to share them, but you put them on Instagram and it's just they vanish into the ether within a couple minutes and nobody sees them, and now it's all about videos, so they're getting seen even less. So I heard about Substack and I actually created an account but never did anything with it for probably 6 months or something like this. And then it just kind of occurred to me, well, this is a more permanent residence for my photographs if I create a post to go along with them. And it'll give me an outlet to just kind of initially just really kind of like notes, just write the backstory of what was going on when I took this image, just to give it a little more context. But then that kind of quickly kind of devolved or evolved into writing more of the, creative story type thing that goes along with it.
Yeah, and how long ago, did you start writing on Substack?
A little over 2 years ago now. I think I started consistently maybe 2 years ago.
Yeah, and I've gone back and read some of your older posts, particularly like when you restack them or share them. But yeah, the evolution of so many things. Your photography in this case, you're pushing the boundaries with hiking further for longer, whether it's a through hike or different types of hikes for different purposes based on the season and what you're going out for. And of course, you're writing. And you're now also starting to converge philosophy, particularly Stoicism, into probably the perspective that you're taking on hikes when things arise, whether that's weather, different types of adversity, or just contemplation of what's happening. And that's been a really fun evolution of your writing. When and why did you find Stoicism?
It's been a long time, to be honest, but it's been only fairly recently that I've gotten more of an in-depth understanding of the whole philosophy. So I guess going back many years, I, had a long love affair with martial arts, and that led me to kind of the Japanese culture and interested in Zen and that sort of thing through that angle. But I don't know, I kind of pulled away from that kind of under concerns of more cultural appropriation type stuff. This isn't really quite so relevant to me and being an American. And what I found was that some of the stuff that Stoicism was addressing was very similar, just in a different language and a different cultural perspective on it. So it's been an interest of mine for many years, but kind of the more I write about it and the more I ask questions about it leads me to read about it and understand it more. And so now I feel like I'm kind of gaining some confidence in knowing what it's all about, and I think maybe that's kinda coming through in my writing a little bit too.
It absolutely is. And it's funny, like the more questions you ask, the more you look into it, the more questions and things that you can write about to reflect further happen. So the more interest you get, the deeper you go, the more things open up. It's not like we come to these conclusions and you have it all figured out, which is what I love about many forms of philosophy, particularly Stoicism, is that virtue and certain concepts of justice and good we can apply broadly, but specifically we have to figure that out for ourselves, and that's a never ending journey, and that's starting to come across in your writing quite a bit as you color a post based on the color of your hike. What are some of the resources that you've sought out recently as you've gone deeper in Stoicism to learn more about it?
Oh, there's a phenomenal book that gives a primer on it that's, I have it right here on my desk, actually, Stoic Ethics: The Basics. Brittany Pollitt's actually on Substack, phenomenal resource, but that book just is groundbreaking for me and just laying the basics of what it's all about. But, more recently, I've been reading a lot of Cicero, and he's not one of the big 3 Stoics, normally you'd think of Seneca, Marcus Aurelius, and Epictetus, but I mean, obviously we have the most writing from them, but they don't really describe the whole philosophy in a kind of cohesive and instructive way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
So there's other resources that I really never knew about until more recently, and Cicero being one of them. His On Duties and On Moral Ends, he really describes what Stoicism's all about in quite some detail, and it's been a big source of interest for me recently.
Yeah, Brittany's outstanding. So yeah, but we all connect with each other in post. She's as
Yeah.
busy as ever these days, but yeah, she has many resources out there through her account, and that book, of course, being one of the primary ones. So good call out. That's awesome. So coming back to backpacking, as the knee healed up and you started exploring different types of hikes, like we were talking about before we went live, through hikes versus a loop based hike or nearby truck, so you can always get out of there if you have to. As you started to explore those edges and push the boundaries, what have become some of your favorite types of hikes? Maybe favorite types of seasons, whether it's wildflowers or looking for cloud inversions, which is, by the way, is one of my favorite
Yep.
photography to do. Waterfalls. Kind of, what are some of your favorite reasons to go on a hike, and simultaneously, what are some of your favorite types of hikes?
Yeah, so, um, every season has its different qualities, right? And like we are discussing earlier, you can never really set your mind on, "I want exactly this," because you never know exactly what nature's gonna give you. But, yeah, excuse me. Autumn is absolutely one of my favorite times to be outside with the change of color in the leaves and the temperature and all that. So, all through the fall, I'm looking for every opportunity I can to get out. Kind of the evolution of the backpacking itself kind of came from the photography in a way because as I had done it when I was younger, it was just, what do I need to go spend the night somewhere? So a lot of army surplus gear, just whatever I thought I would need, probably a little hatchet or, whatever survivalist kind of tools I would bring with me. But once I started lugging all my camera gear that weighs quite a bit, then I'm looking to cut weight. And so once I started researching how to cut weight, I discovered the whole ultralight backpacking. And so ultralight, and I'm not ultralight, but I'm trying to use some ultralight concepts to offset the weight of the camera gear that I have to carry. But ultralight goes hand in hand with long distance backpacking. So the more I kind of learned about ultralight, the more I got curious about, well, what does this mean to go from point A to point B, without being a loop where you come back to the beginning. Uh, so, still the majority, I'd say, of my trips are going to be just 1 or 2 nights just because that's the time I have available. And that's going to be a loop of some type or just going out to a point and then coming back the next day. I've done longer loops like the Georgia loop that I did this past spring. Was a 60-mile loop, so that was more of an undertaking. But yeah, the through hiking, there's just something different about a through hike where it starts at point A, it ends at point B. There's no going back to the beginning. It's transformative in a way. It's kinda like a pilgrimage. You begin at one place, and by the time you're done, you're a different person because of all the experiences that have happened in between. So, I'm looking at doing those, difficulty being all the time is that, it's more time commitment, so what can I logistically accomplish?
So cool. And I love how you related that to being a pilgrimage because you're making these experiences transformative, not only for yourself, but as a writer and then getting to share it for anyone who is reading it. Um, what kind of hikes do you have planned coming up?
So, the next big one that I'm looking at doing is the Bartram Trail, and that one is 112 miles long. It starts kind of on the border of North Georgia and South Carolina, goes up through North Georgia and finishes in North Carolina. That one's interesting because it'll be long enough that I can't carry all of the food that I need with me for the entire trip. So I'll have to stop in Franklin, North Carolina and resupply in the middle of it and continue on. It's my third attempt trying to do this trail. It was derailed the first time by Hurricane Helene, and then the second time there was a large wildfire that had part of the trail closed. So hopefully this third time's the charm.
Yeah. And you're planning that you said sometime later in October.
Yeah, yeah, towards the end of October.
Well, I hope that happens because it'll obviously produce another great series. And you mentioned the
Yeah.
Georgia Loop. Another one of my favorite series was when you wrote about the Georgia Loop. Yeah, it's always interesting not only the experiences you have personally, but the people that you come across and
Oh,
the
yeah.
interactions you have with them or the observations that you make. Because, I mean, in today's day and age, just being outside is foreign for a lot of people. I can't remember the percentages, but like the amount of time people spend outside is pretty staggering because
Mhm.
and have so many things controlled indoors. But when you are hiking in the middle of the woods, particularly as you push further from roads, it becomes pretty barren, and you don't see a lot of characters. But when you do, they typically are quite. They're very funny characters, and that
Yeah.
it's very fun to hear you write about them and your interactions with them. How often do you? I know you brought your son on a hike recently. Do you typically just do solo backpacking trips, or do you have any other buddies
Yeah.
or go with?
No, it's almost entirely solo other than when he comes with me. I have not found anybody that's willing or wanting to go. Exactly. Open invite anytime you want, Kyle.
Good man. I would love to one day. That would be a blast, and we're not that far from each other, so
Yeah,
maybe we'll plan something as the kid
exactly.
older. As we talked about beforehand, I'm kind of settling into this new phase with a fourth child and
Yeah,
homeschooling two
it's
older
a
ones.
lot.
The busy phase of life right now, but like you said, time is one of our most important assets, and how we use that is something that we have control over. But I can't think of anything better when it comes to like um, personal development, particularly for someone like me who's pretty outgoing. I like talking to people. I like being engaged with people, but solitude can offer a lot of insights into yourself and an opportunity for reflection and experiencing the world in nature. What better place to do that than outdoors on your own? And again, that's why your account is one of my favorites. But you can also do that with a few people if you have the right perspective about it. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, awesome. Um, so when it comes to your favorite hikes that you've been on in the past since you've gotten into photography, maybe even into writing about these hikes, what have been some of your favorite hikes and why?
Well, I think any of my trips to Shining Rock are always the favorites. That is just such a special place for me. I've been going there ever since I was young. Having the opportunity to backpack there, spend several nights there, it's just always a unique place. So wonderful. But yeah, like every trip has its own highlights for sure. But yeah, I think the Shining Rock ones are always top of my mind.
What are your favorite things to photograph these days and why?
I think it depends on the season, really. Going back to every season has its unique things. Like coming up in the fall, I'm going to be just looking for those fall colors. Any kind of sunrise or sunset to go along with those is just icing on the cake for sure. And then I always love doing waterfalls. A lot of times I do that kind of in the colder months. There's a lot more overcast days in the winter, it seems like, and that kind of just is more conducive to waterfall photography. So, I really just enjoy thinking about the time of year, trying to see what nature would offer during that time of year, and then just go looking for that.
Yeah, Waterfall Wednesdays. I always like when you post those pictures.
Yep. Yeah, I got to get back to doing that. I've been slacking off on that lately.
Yeah, you're so lazy. You've been posting weekly for 2 years with, your writing, your photography, your videos, which are also incredible, and you put in, really calming music. It's amazing all the different things that you do based around these hikes that you're doing primarily and writing about, but as you write about other things now, it's cool to see the evolution behind it. And behind me is something else that you've done, new recently, which is made a magazine,
Yeah.
that has one of your now is this a previous post? Because or is this something separate from Substack?
Yeah, no, that's a series of posts. It was the Foothills Trail through hike, and so I published that back in the spring of 2024.
Okay,
Um, May
gotcha.
of 2024 is when I actually did the hike. So it took this long to get it together and put something in print. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out in the end.
Yeah, the pictures in there are incredible, and that makes sense because you and I had not connected on Substack back in spring of 2024. I was just posting, ghosting at that point, not really engaged with other accounts, and just kind of finding my way and writing style, and basically just sharing journal entries for a little while there. But
Mm.
I've gone through the magazine, looking at pictures, particularly with my daughter, who my whole family loves your work, by the way. But we were looking at the pictures recently, and that it came together really well. We were talking about this recently too, how obviously you made it recently, but the magazine has like an older feel to it. Like it's something like that you've had for a while. It has the look of being a little weathered, and it comes together really, really well. So props to you on this product that you made. And you've made some other things like bookmarks, and it's cool to see how you're applying your photography, not just by posting it, but making products around it. Because yeah, and coming back to
Yeah,
the how you amplify the water and the contrast that you have, it makes it look extra real, like not just a picture of a waterfall, but that water seems like it's jumping out of the picture.
yeah, yeah. I mean, technically speaking, a lot of that has to do with using a polarizing filter. Just cuts out a lot of the glare in the water, and like most cell phone pictures that you would take of the water, you wouldn't have that because you don't have a polarizer on that. But yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
And you obviously did pick that well based on the passion that you have in your writing. I'm curious about some of the harder hikes that you've been on, some of the different forms of adversity that you face, whether it's weather, injury, illness, anything else. What are some of the harder hikes and why?
Well, I think probably the Foothills Trail was the hardest one that I've done so far. Yeah, so that one, just by happenstance, it stormed on me almost every single day. I was trying to hike a long distance every day on some very rugged terrain up there in upstate South Carolina. A lot of walking along rivers where it's just kind of real rocky and rooty. And yeah, it was just, I guess also, like I didn't have a great chance to break in my footwear ahead of time. So there's a lot of foot pain and just physical hardship to go along with it, but it was very rewarding in the end for sure.
And that's I always love hearing stories where some of the most fulfilling and rewarding experiences are initially the hardest ones. So
Mhm.
overcome challenge and your life is a story of that in many ways. But hearing hikes and stories, and my goodness, when the feet start going on long excursions, it makes going to make the rest of it, no matter what happens, miserable. So
Yeah.
planning ahead for the feet. That's a big one. What type of speaking of feet, what type of footwear do you like on these hikes, socks, kind of what's your whole plan around maintenance of your feet so you can keep moving?
Yeah, so, I mean, originally, I was wearing hiking boots, something rugged that would hold up, but when I was learning about the more ultralight backpacking, most of those people are using trail runners. So that's what I've adopted is, I use Ultra Lone Peaks right now. Um, just something really lightweight and, that theoretically that they can get wet and just dry out as I'm hiking. They're very comfortable. I like them. I wouldn't go back, I don't think, to boots at this point unless it's a midwinter trip or something like this, but,
Yeah, it's good to know.
yeah, takes some adapting to get used to them for sure. The Ultras are 0 drop, so, I guess most footwear has a little bit of an elevated heel, and when you don't have that, all of a sudden, it takes a while for your feet to adjust it. But, I've also taken to wearing minimalist footwear just day to day, so I think in the past year or so, I've gotten a lot more adapted to it.
Makes sense and good to hear 'cause, yeah, you think you're gonna go backpacking, out in the country, wear hiking boots, and some of those boots are really thick, really heavy,
Yeah,
and it's great that they're waterproof, and like you said, weather depending, sometimes you might need not only waterproof, but really warm, and it could make sense to have based on the reason you're going out, but, man, lighter, particularly when you're going longer, it's always better, and those low
yeah.
profile still get wet. That's good to hear because yeah, a lot of people, I know me included in the past, wide, big shoes, but yeah, in my experience, the lighter has held up much better, and of course, I myself hold up much better over time. The lighter
Mhm.
in those
Yeah,
areas.
for sure.
So one of my newer favorite words is awe, and trying to seek experiences, not where like I'm seeking the experience just to live fully and present. And rather than chasing awe, trying to allow it just to come to me, whether it's simple things like playing with my children with no set intention outside of being present with them and letting them lead. Of course, in my own personal experiences, but also I experience it quite a bit in in reading and certain photography, and of course your account. It's Sunday mornings. You actually do a great job consistently of producing that through your writing and pictures together. But what does that word mean to you? And obviously, I would assume you're experiencing quite a bit in these hikes. But what other areas of your life produce awe these days and in general?
God, that's well, you mentioned it yourself. It's about being present and it's about being aware. I think those moments are around us all the time. It's just we have so many distractions in our modern world that we don't realize it as much as we should or could. So, yeah, I mean, it's obvious when you go out to the wilderness and you see that great sunrise in the morning, you experience that awe. And that's what I want to try to share. But really, I mean, that stuff's all around us all the time. And it's just a matter of paying attention to it and being willing to accept it and learn from it.
Yeah, and the expectations is a big one for me because whether it's words like happiness or as we're talking about awe, I find, at least with me personally and historically, the more that I'm expecting an experience to produce it or intentionally trying to seek that outcome, the less impact that it has rather than zero expectations, full presence, embrace the moment for whatever it is, and then go with the flow as things inevitably change. It's great to have a plan. It's great to go on a certain backpacking trip in order to get pictures of said flower. But who knows what's going to happen, and being able to pivot and adapt and still have an amazing experience that maybe you couldn't even have planned for. I find the less I focus on an outcome, but more just the process and the presence in it. Actually, the more I receive prevalence wise of those things that I were used to be seeking out intentionally.
That's the serendipity of it all, right? Yeah, you just, when something doesn't work out, you just have to look at what is there, and it's like Marcus Aurelius would say the impediment to an action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. It's like water in a river that's coming around a boulder. It's got to find a different way around. That's the same experience everywhere. It's you can go out with certain expectations, but when that doesn't materialize, it's just a matter of accepting what's around and just keeping that open mindset and appreciation.
Completely agreed. Love it. I'm curious what Eric was like pre-children and post-children, and how becoming a father
Like,
came to life. I know this is pre-writing, but that weaves into your writing sometimes. But what did becoming a father do in your life, philosophically and in general?
yeah, that's a big question. You know, like I never knew either of my grandfathers. My dad passed away when I was 18, so I don't really have a good example that I'm following as I'm raising my own kids. I'm just kind of thinking through it, like how would I want to raise them? It's very deliberate, I try and expose them to all the things that I enjoy, but finding that line between pushing them too hard and not pushing them enough. But it's a learning process for me as much as it is for them. Um, but yeah, you know, I had a lot more freedom, obviously, before kids to go out and do what I want to do. But with those experiences from pre-kids, I try to, impart that whatever I've learned through those experiences onto them, give them those little, bits of guidance along the way, but still at the same time encourage them on their own interests and their own path and let them figure things out for themselves.
Beautiful. And relating back to expectations, and something I still struggle with every day, where I project expectations of an experience onto them, like their behavior is something that I'm more focused on rather than my own behavior, and being very deliberate in my actions to be present and help support whatever the current issue or the eventual goal might be in a day, or of course in life, to help lead them, guide them to
Right.
whatever feeling for them. But removing expectations in this realm, again, I have to remind myself of it daily, but bringing back consciousness to my actions has helped me quite a bit. So I like how you mentioned that.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's leading by example is a huge part, I think, because the kids, they're always watching. They're always seeing us, whether we want them to or not. And it's, if they see you out there and getting after it every single day, staying in shape, doing, great things, trying to achieve great things, they're going to absorb some of that, whether we realize it right away or not.
Yeah, and they'll also realize really quick, we can say all the right things, but if we're not doing it, now we lose all credibility,
Yeah.
all trust. So if I'm gonna be
Yeah.
certain things, I sure as shit better be doing them too, or
Exactly.
or why would they follow? So
Right.
and what we say is important, but what we do is far more important, particularly if it is misaligned with what we say. That will resonate in a very wrong way, and that's been true of my own experience with mentors of mine in the past. Like you're saying one thing, but you're doing something very different,
Yep.
and it may not be spoken. I might not say it ever, just like our kids wouldn't, but they're seeing it. So I wholeheartedly agree that our actions must align with our words, and we must think about what we say, and then therefore do what we are hopefully saying is the right thing. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
well said.
Becoming a father, is probably what led me. It changed me in so many ways, but it's the reason I actually sought out stoicism and philosophy, or found it because I was looking for what other ways can I develop myself to be what they deserve, which is the best version of myself
Mm.
every day going forward. And yeah,
Yeah, it's a powerful motivation.
100%. And so, yeah, and again, with philosophy, and all colors of philosophy, not just stoicism, I love coming back to the fact that there is no destination. There is no like boom labeled, checking the box, done. It's an endless, ongoing process, and those reflective questions that you pose in your posts are just another great example of it. You don't finish a hike and then you're just done with it forever. And no, you come back to it and you have a different experience, a different perspective, and finding different ways to evolve despite doing quote unquote the same thing in the same hike. So it's been fun when you see you do a similar location but have a very different experience, and different colors of your photos from that experience.
Yeah, because we're different people at different points of our lives, right? So even going back to the same place, I'm going to be different and have carry different things with me into that experience. There's times where I'll be thinking, deliberately wanting to think about certain philosophical ideas or topics, and I'll write those out ahead of time. And then, when I'm backpacking, I don't take any kind of headphones or listen to music or podcasts while I'm walking at all. It's just me and my brain and, mulling those things over while I'm out there. Other times it's just the experience itself, and I don't have anything in mind ahead of time, but, just having that silence and that lack of distraction really lets me absorb what's going on and how I'm reacting to it. And then, like I said, I was jotting those notes down in my little notebook while I'm out there. And then I bring that home with me and really reflect on it and kind of add some flavor to it when I'm there.
You can never step in the same river twice. Not the same,
Exactly.
not the same man. Great quote. I think Heraclitus, I think, was his name.
Yep. Hmm.
That quote, and yeah, and it's so I do seek out experiences, but not to have the same experience, but to see how different I am and how I can approach it a little bit better each
Yeah.
time. Then reflect on it, maybe write about it, whether I share that or not in a journal or in public. But yeah, never ending. And how can we find opportunities to use our experiences, no matter what is happening, adversity or pleasant, to make us better? And that's what I'm seeing as you evolve philosophically, and sharing your philosophy in your writing. How can you make these experiences make your mind and yourself better? Yeah, very, very cool orientation to have. Cloud inversions. I wanna ask you about cloud inversions. So it was Waterfall Wednesday, so then you started posting cloud inversions,
Yeah.
and talk about awe. I've never seen a cloud inversion in person, so the closest I've been to it is through your incredible pictures. When was the first time that you saw that? Was that intentional? And I'm sure that you try to seek out areas that have that now because just how surreal that looks, and,
Uh, I don't know how to predict them. I don't know enough about the weather or meteorology or to know what exact conditions causes that or what doesn't. I've seen it on some of these trips when, like, when I was younger and some of the trips that my dad took us on and stuff. but, every now and then when I'm backpacking, I do run across it, and it's just always a spectacular thing to wake up to in the morning, but, it's just those low clouds when they settle into the valleys, and then you're on the mountain peak up above that level, and so you can look down, and it really does seem like you're just sitting on an island in a sea of cloud everywhere. It's a special experience.
Man, yeah, it's definitely ranks amongst my favorite types of photos. That yeah, yeah. I want to intentionally. I'm gonna go against what I previously said. I want to intentionally seek that experience out somehow, some way. But really, I just need to go on some backpacking trips.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not gonna experience if you don't put yourself in the arena. So that's an arena I want to involve myself in to.
Exactly.
Um, I'm curious, we talked about fatherhood changing you. As you've started sharing your writing, sharing your photography, and now philosophy, particularly getting into philosophy deeper as you have recently, has that changed you as a police officer? You've been a police officer for a few decades, but after that knee injury and kind of shifting a few things in your life toward what you're doing now on Substack and in general, how has that changed you as a police officer and man?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's an interesting thing being in public safety and being a cop for that long because you definitely go through periods of burnout, through periods of cynicism. You see kind of the worst of humanity on a daily basis. Um, Not only just the terrible people that, you have to deal with from time to time, but just the abuse of the 911 system, just all the different things, all the different frustrations, it adds up, year after year. So I definitely had periods of that, I was struggling with for sure. The knee injury itself, I rehabbed myself from that and came back to being physically capable again for sure, but it definitely damaged my motivation for the job. I mean, I was in rehab for 9 months, and the felon that I was chasing when I broke my knee, he was back out in that same block doing the same thing 2 weeks later, with that a felony probation warrant, and that's pretty demotivating. Uh, but the philosophy has gone a long way into turning that around, or at least giving me a much healthier perspective on it. Um, with Stoicism specifically, um, I see what I'm learning there, and I'm at a point when I can start to kind of articulate that. So when I'm encountering people, I can see them as, well, they're just calling for help. They don't have this source of perspective, this source of, potential wisdom, even though I wouldn't call myself wise. I have some of that wisdom to relay to them. And I try to talk to people in that way and give them some of that guidance, not necessarily saying, hey, this is stoicism, you need to do it this way. But, feeding that into the conversation. Hey, what if instead of being all upset about this situation, you looked at it from this angle? And I mean, it's shocking how well people are receptive to those ideas when you present it that way. And, once you have some success along those lines, it really opens up a whole new dynamic into the job. So now lately I'm seeing like every day I go to work, there's that potential there to bring that element of philosophy into what I'm doing, encountering people in these very tough situations. So not only am I challenging myself to embody the philosophy, but I'm also trying to deliver that to people to help them work through their own scenarios as well.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's very powerful. I like that very much. And similarly, you can't like I've been known to try and control things that I have zero ability to control throughout my life and put a lot of stress and effort into trying to change my respective reality around me. But the power of changing your perspective and focusing inward where we do have control and reframing or shifting what we're focusing on or coloring our thoughts just a little differently. It's amazing how that then does influence your reality. And it may not be
Right.
instantaneous. Sometimes it actually is because it can bring peace and calm and then our ability to focus and execute. But definitely over time too. And you working in law enforcement, I can only imagine if you're approaching someone who is really amped up and you're trying to de-escalate, if you have this perspective inside of you on how to get through to somebody rather than trying to control them, the more you control yourself, the more you can actually naturally and sometimes even non-verbally de-escalate. And it's
Right.
just an important skill to have in all realms, but especially for a police officer like yourself.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's definitely an element of confidence that comes with it. And yeah, it's a lot about how you just approach the situation and kind of a mindset that you have of not, accusing and jumping or to a certain point of view, but kind of being open to, you encounter people that are very upset and very emotional and very traumatized by whatever they're dealing with. And it's very easy to kind of downplay that or to kind of villainize them for being emotional and that sort of thing. But if you approach it from an open mind of this person is going through a horrible experience and is seeking guidance, and you can't get through to everybody. Some people just are in a state where they're not receptive to listening to anything, but some of them are, and you can say a thing or two that really cuts through a lot of that, and then all of a sudden the next thing you know, they're willing to have a conversation with you and it turns into a different experience altogether.
Same thing with parenting. It's
Yeah.
me trying to
Yeah,
get through.
exactly.
Me trying to get through to my 3-year-old. Go figure, the more I amp up, the more it doesn't help settle the situation at all, but the
Yep.
more calm I am and focus inward, that oftentimes the more I can connect with them, and most people are not trying to give you a hard time. Basically, all kids are not trying to give you a hard time, they're trying to connect or they're having a hard time,
Yep.
and, just that little shift, that little perspective shift can really help you, again, have empathy, but more so just inner peace so you can remain calm and be
Yep.
strong whatever you need to execute. So yeah, the convergence. This applies to law enforcement, parenting, really just connection with anybody else or with yourself when you are alone in the middle of the woods. And then it starts raining and you start running into other types of adversity. I didn't realize did you did you have surgery on the ACL or is that all just rehab after?
Oh, no, it's surgery for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had the cadaver ligament put in, but then yeah, it was wild, dude.
Yeah.
Had had the surgery and then it healed up, but had a bunch of scar tissue built in there for a month, I could not bend my knee more than, like, 5 degrees and had to have another procedure where they snapped my leg and broke up all that scar tissue, and then after that, it was just a lot of work on my part.
How's it hold up now with these longer hikes as you continue to push the envelope?
I still feel it in every step that I take,
Yep.
every step,
Talk about
but
resilience. You still keep getting out there and getting after it.
yeah, yeah, just a little pain, it's not gonna hold me back.
Good man. So what are your plans? I know you have the upcoming hike in the fall, but if you project into the future as far as photography, writing, all the things that you're balancing with your personal life, and now that you're starting to make products, any other plans for evolution of one of my favorite accounts on Substack?
It's hard to say. Photography, it's got its ups and downs for me, to be honest. I love it. I really enjoy it. Back when I first started getting back into it in 2019, 2020, it was really kind of with the objective of this is going to be a side income. If I can just get good enough at doing the photography, that's what the purpose of it would be, is generate a little bit of extra money that has nothing to do with being a cop.
Yeah.
That I don't think is ever gonna happen at this point. Just kind of the nature of where photography's at right now. I suppose people can, make some income doing portraits or weddings or, commercial photography, but that's not what I wanna do with photography, and what I do wanna do with photography is not income generating for the
Yeah.
most people, majority of people, I would say. So I don't know. I don't know what, that's one of the things I'm kind of exploring right now is, well, what is the purpose of it, other than it, a sense of gratification for myself. And then I really enjoy the idea of presenting that for the benefit of people that want to see it and want to read about it. But is there a higher purpose to go along with it? I'm trying to figure all that out. I think some of it has to do with getting the photos in print somehow. The magazine was a good start. I love having some of my photos printed, and I have a few of them around the house that I have printed, but that's an expensive prospect, because I mean, they don't always turn out like I'd like in print. There's a big difference between a backlit computer screen versus how that translates to photo paper. So it's a trial and error process there, and every time I do that is a financial investment. But maybe, I would love to be able to get my work in a gallery or at least in a cafe wall or something like that, to where they're an actual physical photograph in a frame that somebody can look at and, hold, and it's an actual real thing instead of just a digital idea of a thing. Um, yeah, that's sort of photography's going. Now with the backpacking itself, I would love to keep pushing the envelope of how far I can go and the places that I go. Dream of mine has always been to through hike the Appalachian Trail. Uh, Probably gonna have to wait until I retire, just logistically. I can't do without 4 or 5 months of income at this point in time. So we'll see what happens with that. But I'm always looking for more places to go to explore.
Well, the wife already agreed, if I can buy my dream cabin in the middle of the woods after we retire, that we are, gonna outfit it completely with your photography on the wall. So you'll have at least one client if we wanna explore, the different types of prints. But,
Nice.
I like the idea of a gallery because again, you've written about this before, it's in your bio a little bit, but we're in the age of AI right now,
Yeah.
and anyone with a smart device can produce some pretty beautiful pictures. I mean, it is very impressive technology, but as this new phase of the world continues, um, to be implemented and evolve, it'll be very interesting how we, societally speaking, as people, prioritize human created work. And I think AI is an amazing tool. I'm a big fan of it. I use it at work for different things. I use it to create images for my posts. It's a cool tool, and there's probably so many use cases in my life that are untapped that I can reflect on and think about. But when it comes to like reading information of any kind and wisdom, uh, or enjoying art. I'm interested in the human, and it's
Yeah.
interesting. Your wife's a dancer, so like your house is just full of different types of art, and how cool is that? And skills, like human skills related to art. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if that sentiment of when I'm seeking art, when I'm seeking knowledge and wisdom, I want it to come from a human just because I'm still there is no destination again, right? Like we're all trying to figure this out and apply
Yeah.
concepts. And I understand large language models, they are pulling from past human stuff, consolidating, it's really cool. But I'm still interested in finding credible sources, individuals in the lanes that they swim in to get that wisdom from them so I can start trying to apply it to myself to create my own wisdom. Yeah, I don't know. I know
Such
you
a
agree with that stuff.
conflicting topic.
Yeah.
Such a conflicting thing for me with AI. I really don't know where I stand 100% on it. Because I mean, the black and white of it is, using AI to just create something that looks like a real image that somebody took. And I'm, totally against that because, like you said, I'm in it for the human element. I want to know that this is a real experience that somebody has had seeing a real scene, not just some kind of generated thing. But then there's, you get into the whole intellectual property angle of it, and the AI is crawling the internet and stealing these images to base its creations off of without giving credit to the original artists, and that goes for photography or writing, and then there's the ethical angle of the amount of just energy that it takes to run AI, which is exponentially greater than anything that we've seen before. And, if I'm going to participate in using AI, am I part of that, enormous energy consumption that is really unsustainable in the long run. But it's such a gray area too, because there's so many points right now where AI is kind of integrated in stuff where you would never really expect it. So it's like with my own photo editing, the Adobe software incorporates AI in there. And sometimes I've used it and not even realized it just because of one of the functions that I've done in some of the photo editing. And where is that line? Because I know that I can use AI to tremendously improve a photograph that I've actually taken. So, what's the line between AI generation or something that I've created and then just enhanced with AI? I have no idea on the answer to these things. But yeah, it's going to be interesting going forward on where this is leading us.
It's revolutionizing all fields and in different ways. And just like anything, any new capability, any new technology can be used for good or for ill. And
Yeah,
finding that balance individually and collectively, that's an ongoing, never-ending process too. And what's next after that? Like you said, we only scale. I mean, we either pivot and get rid of something that's outdated, or we scale. And to your point about energy consumption, it's an interesting dilemma because it's not just one collective AI company. It's multiple companies, and they're
hmm,
all scaling around the world. And the amount that goes into that, you often don't hear that conversation happen too much. But in order to drive that energy that is needed, just for us to even have this conversation right now,
yeah,
it's incredible what we have to do in order to maintain these conveniences that we've come to expect. Yeah, it's a interesting time,
yeah, for sure.
but but also, when it comes to human created content, it's going to be an interesting time to be able to differentiate yourself. So as we
Yeah,
do become more reliant on, I mean, we're already quite reliant on technology. It's. I even think of, like, I used to have probably 50 phone numbers memorized, if not more, and now I barely remember my wife's, let alone anyone else's, because of
right,
smartphones. Um,
exactly.
but the ability to think freely and have your own opinion, or to be able to create individually and uniquely and creatively without some sort of technological support, that is a differentiator. And to
Right,
be fully human in today's day and age, and I'm sure into the future, unless something drastically changes, requires agency on your part. And
right.
whether that is going to bring income or just fulfillment as you figure it out in the lane that you're able to maintain. um, mainly, don't stop what you're doing, please, because
Oh
because
no.
as a fan, but also I think that is a differentiator.
Yeah,
As long as you can still, of course, meet what you need to for yourself and your family when it comes to finances.
sure.
But I do think it's such an opportunity now more than ever, because it's so easy, and we pursue easy as human beings, and for good reason. That's just how we evolved. When it could be easy, we did that to survive. But now that it's easy to survive, it's harder to thrive, because everything can be easy and you don't need to do anything when it comes to skill
Right.
development or actions. But
And
the more
because it's so new with this AI, we don't know the long-term consequences of leaning into that ease. If it's so easy to find out the information that we want right at the snap of our fingers just by plugging it into Chat GPT, do we lose something in the process of trying to figure that out for ourselves?
I,
That's a very important question I think we need to consider.
I agree completely, not only collectively but individually. And
Mhm.
my assumption for someone who's not using a lot of AI, but I like reading on it and reading high performers who do. They're finding out ways for AI to be like an assistant or a supplement, so they can still focus on the innovation, on the creativity, and let AI do all the knowns that are out there throughout the world to gather up information, so they can clear up their own personal bandwidth, as ironically, their assistant requires an exorbitant amount of bandwidth that we've never even thought of, and all the
Yeah,
energy in the world. But it's a tool, and like anything else, you can use a tool productively or destructively. And yeah, it's a question, another reflection, if you will, that we need to ponder, particularly individually, as we start using that, so you don't lose yourself.
right.
Yeah, brother, we've already flown through an hour, which that flew by quickly.
It did.
I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while, and this, yeah, exceeded all my expectations. Um,
Awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
this has been great.
Absolutely, man. And this magazine again, a big hit. So I'll
Yeah,
definitely
I appreciate that.
I'll put some links in the summary post with that. But that's such a cool, unique idea to kind of converge a lot of stuff that you're doing on the account to give us some physical forms of the great work that you do, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kyle.
Thank you, man. Talk soon.
Yeah.